We would like to greet you business people in Singapore. You're an economic buzz English talk show program that outlook the economic as well as social issue for your business plan. We are now still discussing about sustaining palm oil sector in Indonesia. This time we have Mr. Irwan Gunawan as the Deputy Director of Market Transformation at WWF here in Indonesia. Mr. Irwan, how very nice to have you back in the talk show. We really appreciate for your time.
Good evening, Erwin. Good to see you again.
Good evening.
Thanks very much for inviting WWF for this.
And thank you so much for sharing your video footage. This is really moving. I was captivated by the way they make this kind of short documentary movie. The big question, we keep on raising this kind of question. Why should we be sustainable in our palm oil sector in Asia? First of all, I would like to ask your general perspective over here. Apart from its main strategic contribution toward Indonesian economic development, because we are still considered as the biggest producer of CPO in the world. But at the same time, the palm oil sector is also being finger-pointed as the main source of this kind of environmental issue, not only in Indonesia, but impacting the global environmental. What is on WWF perspective on this?
WWF takes this palm oil issue is not about the commodity itself. So the problem is not on the palm oil as a commodity, but the challenge is actually on the way it's being produced in Indonesia. Over the 10 years period between 1995 to 2005, 65% of the plantations that were established during that period has caused deforestation. So this is the primary driver of the concern from the market that calls Indonesia as the largest producer for palm oil should take measures to address and incorporate environmental and also social issues. So this is where the whole sustainability framework is being framed. Well, as we see in the footage, right? WWF is one of the founders of the Roundtable of Sustainable Palm Oil, where this independent organization is bridging the interest between the consumers and the producers, the interest between parties who concern with palm oil, the NGOs, the business, the financiers, all the parties sit together and they try to develop a win-win solution. So for us, especially WWF in Indonesia, we see that palm oil is really a lucrative source of income from Indonesia, but also it gives us a mandate, not for the market, it's for the future generation again, right? We want our future generation to get the same benefit from this commodity over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years.
That's why WWF, especially here in Indonesia, always suggesting and using the word sustainability in business. Whatever business we are into, what kind of business line, especially for this palm oil sector, it's going to be very, very crucial for us to make it remain sustainable in the long run. Speaking about this RSPO, Roundtable Sustainable Palm Oil, when we talk about the certification of the RSPO, how strong is it legally when we talk about the enforcement toward the application or the practice of RSPO certification among the business players here?
One thing needs to be underlined here. RSPO is a voluntary scheme. So it's not mandatory, it's not an obligatory scheme for the palm oil producers, not only in Indonesia but also elsewhere in this world. Being voluntary, there are consensus which the business also contributes to set the standard itself. So it's not mainly driven by the market, it's a consensus process. So RSPO to some extent helps convince and convey the message to the world as the guarantor that the palm oil from Indonesia, which certified and labeled by the RSPO, is somewhat more responsible to the environment and also to the social.
It can ensure that I am a good guy in business. I am going green by the time my product is being labeled by the RSPO. But anyway, do you see the growing number of Indonesian business people, especially in terms of willingly join and care and pay more attention toward this kind of RSPO certification, as well as the label, the way they run and do the practice in this palm oil sector?
Speaking of the percentage, now there are about 12% of the total plantations in terms of the areas in Indonesia that already certified by the RSPO. So roughly there's about 1.5 million hectares of the palm oil plantations in Indonesia that already certified. And compared to the other certification scheme, RSPO can be considered as the most successful sustainability scheme for the commodity. So in this regard, this is an advantage for Indonesia. Indonesia is leading in all avenues in terms of the palm oil value chains. We are the largest exporters. At the same time, we are also the largest consumer, even though that we are not the largest importers. And since 2006, we are surpassing the Malaysia as the largest certified palm oil. So it shows that the willingness from the business players in Indonesia are increasing quite significantly in the past 5 years.
So given the ratio you just mentioned earlier, are we reaching the good level, like we are very progressing? It signals that we are progressing in this case, or there are still more room to grow in terms of gaining more successful story of being RSPO certified?
We still want this RSPO certification to be a norm in palm oil management in Indonesia. Out of 10.5 million hectares that established plantation now in Indonesia, we still have plenty of rooms for the other business players to join the club, to enjoy the privilege of being responsible, and also to have a more productive communications with the NGOs. It's not the age of the boycott anymore. It's the age of people should talk and sit together and find solutions, find way out, instead of the cornered in the problem.
We are really love it by the time you are using this statement. It's not the age for the boycott anymore. But I've been wondering about this, given the context of Indonesian business environment and situation, what it takes for us to bring it all the way from being voluntarily involved to make it as a norm, especially for those who still have this kind of less awareness over this kind of issue. But if you don't mind, maybe we can continue for the later session, sir. To make the RSPO as a norm in Indonesia, that must be very, very big challenging thing for us all to do. And we are still have another session to discuss more. For this evening, we talk about sustaining palm oil sector in Indonesia with WWF in Indonesia.